Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Sunday. We run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. So if you like that, go check out the channel. This first news story: Julius Thomas, Lawrence Timmons reportedly to be cut by the Miami Dolphins. This comes from Bleacher Report. In an effort to provide some much-needed salary cap relief, the Miami Dolphins plan to release tight end Julius Thomas and linebacker Lawrence Timmons, according to Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. The two moves, which the Dolphins plan to make before the new league year on March 14th, would save them about $11 million in cap space. If the team also terminates the fifth-year option for offensive tackle Juwan James, it would clear up an additional $9.3 million. According to Armando Salguero, the team is already more than $7 million over the projected cap for 2018, with 55 players under contract. The Dolphins also compounded their troubles Wednesday when they placed the franchise tag on receiver Jarvis Landry, which would cost them about $16 million for one season if no deal is reached, per John Breach of CBS Sports. Thomas finished his first year in Miami after being a bust free agent signing for the Jaguars. He ended the year with 388 yards and 3 touchdowns in 14 games. Timmons came to the Dolphins in 2017 after a 10-year with the Steelers, finishing third on the team with 84 tackles in 14 games. Both had signed 2-year deals but don't appear likely to see the second season. After finishing 2017 with a 6-10 record, however, the Dolphins will need to find ways to upgrade their roster without spending much money. So this is a very interesting story. Obviously, Lawrence Timmons, I feel like I'm not going to say it was his fault, because I do think he would have, if the team was healthier and the team was, if all the stuff that didn't happen, that happened, what I'm trying to say is, if we had a normal season and everybody was healthy, I think Lawrence Timmons would have had a pretty decent year. And I think he would have been able to contribute. But obviously also contributed to off-the-field issues as well. So I guess, it was a lose-lose situation with Lawrence Timmons. Obviously the experiment failed, but not for the reasons I think we all thought it would fail. I think many of us thought that his play would have deteriorated because of his age, but it didn't. He gave us solid minutes. He was a solid role player, but at the end of the day, it was meaningless minutes for a meaningless season. So, I think it is what it is, but I don't think Lawrence Timmons was a bad signing if our team was more competitive, is what I'm trying to get across, the point I'm trying to get across. He'll go to, if he goes back to Pittsburgh, he'll give them super valuable minutes and, contribute mightily to that team. But if we were a very competitive team, which we were early on in the season, he was giving us pretty good minutes when he finally came back, obviously after the whole debacle with him and Adam Gase. And as far as Julius Thomas goes, we all know that Julius Thomas was a straight-up terrible. Looking back on it, I was skeptical about the trade. When preseason was rolling around, I was like, okay, I think he can really contribute to the red zone. Hopefully help our third down conversion rate from last year in 2016. He did literally none of those things. He was actually a liability in both phases of the offense. When you talk about run blocking, he was a liability. When you talk about having him on the field in crucial situations like third downs, he was terrible. So, I'm glad to get rid of both of them for various different reasons. I do want to get younger in that linebacker unit. I do feel like we will draft. I think it's obvious at this point. We are going to take a linebacker at some point in the draft. Whether that's in the first round, probably most likely is going to be. So I'm very excited to see if that does happen, whether it's a Tremont Edwards or a Roquan Smith or Evans from Alabama, whoever it is. I'm excited to see Raekwon McMillan line up with another young guy. Kiko Alonso can be the vet in that room and really help them along. So, and as for the tight end situation, I think we're going to get younger there as well. In terms of a veteran presence in there, Marquise Gray hopefully can help some of these young guys along as well, because you don't want just a bunch of young guys populating a room. That's just bad news for everybody. So I do like I think these are the most easy. This is the easiest and most obvious move that the Dolphins will have this entire offseason, because there's a lot of landmines that they could step on and just explode right in their face with a lot of different moves that could happen. When you talk about, this is a huge draft for this franchise upcoming, there's a lot of big names in this draft. There's a lot of opportunities in this draft, I feel like, to really fill some holes. So this is the most obvious move that they can make this entire offseason, is to get rid of these two. So yeah. All right, moving on from that. Mike Iupati trade might work for both Cardinals and Dolphins. This offseason, this comes from the this Cardinals website. This offseason, 2 trades have already made waves around the NFL, even though trades technically cannot still be transacted until, obviously, I think it's the new league year. Even the Arizona Cardinals have been involved in chatter among fans, writers, and talking heads, as they could potentially make a trade to acquire quarterback Nick Foles from the Philadelphia Eagles. Right now, Miami only has Mike Pouncey and Laramie Tunsil as offensive linemen who are assured of starting this coming season. Many other positions, such as guard spots and right tackle, could use quite a bit of help, though. That's where Iupati comes in. The 4-time Pro Bowl blocker is known for his ferociousness and sheer tenacity on the football field, a player who uses his physicality to his advantage. The Cardinals aren't too keen on keeping him due to some injuries he suffered during this past season, barring him from playing in 15 games. He only played 15 games. With a left side contingency of Pouncey, Tunsil, and Iupati, you can be sure that trio will become one of the best in the entire NFL. This is a no-brainer for the Cardinals. They are expected to release him and save money against the salary cap if they are willing to take the dead money hit of $3.4 million and not get anything but cap space. They certainly would be willing to receive a day 3 pick for him. The question is whether the trade makes sense for Miami. They would then take the final 2 years of his contract that would pay him $15.5 million. When he's healthy, he's still dominating in the run game and decent in pass protection. Arizona would get the cap space and draft pick. Miami puts together a dominant left side of the offensive line. So that's the argument. So they would get rid of some dead money, or they would clear some cap space for their team. We would get an old offensive lineman that can't stay healthy. So that would be a terrible trade, obviously. I mean, that's an absolutely terrible trade. That would be a terrible idea and a terrible trade. We need a guard, but there's plenty of young ones in this upcoming draft. Isaac Asiata is still in the fold. We don't know for sure if he's a bust or not. And obviously a 3rd-round pick can't really be a bust, but we don't know if he's not ever going to amount to anything. I mean, he certainly has the physical gifts to be a very good role-playing guard in this league. So we'll see. And he's very similar to Mike Iupati. I compared him to Mike Iupati coming out of Utah when I said, obviously, Isaac Asiata was by far the strongest guard in his class, and so was Mike Iupati. I mean, they're very similar. They play with a lot of anger. They're very physical. They're better in the running game than they are in the passing game, so they're pretty much the same player. We just don't know if Isaac Asiata will ever see the field. We'll see. I don't know. I feel like we need more of a run blocking. I mean, obviously, our team is not physical enough. If you put on the tape of our offense, we are just not physical enough at all. We need to be more physical, and our offensive line is the reason for that. It starts with them, and it ends with them. Mike Pouncey is a physical player. We all know that. But the rest of the offensive line, there's a bunch of really good pass protector. Laramie Tunsil's not a physical guy. Jesse Davis, definitely not a physical guy. Anthony Steen, not a physical guy. Ted Larson, not a physical guy. Jermon Bustrod, not a physical guy. Most of those guys they're the best attributes of their game is pass protection. So we need some grinders in the trenches. We need some physical guys that are going to hit people off the ball and wear them down and really help out Kenyon Drake and whoever the heck else we had put behind him. Get some holes there. And that was one of the biggest, the whole Jay Cutler situation really hurt us, but most of our woes on offense was because of our offensive line constantly taking penalties or the constant negative yardage in the running game, and all that has to do with physicality. Our offensive line was just not physical enough. Our guards were borderline tackles, if we're being honest. So we'll see. All right, next news story: Jarvis Landry rumors. Dolphins open to long-term contract, but trade is likely. The Miami Dolphins' decision to place the franchise tag on Jarvis Landry could be a precursor to trading the wide receiver, per Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald. It would be, quote, a stunner. That comes from Adam Beasley. If the Dolphins don't deal Landry because the value of the franchise tag will place them up against the NFL's 2018 salary cap. Beasley did note the Dolphins are open to working out a long-term extension with Landry, but it would require both sides to find some middle ground in negotiations. The Dolphins announced on Tuesday they placed the franchise tag on Landry, who set an NFL record with 400 receptions over his first 4 seasons. The closest guy was Anquan Bolden to get 334. Landry is expected to make $16.2 million next season under the franchise tag, per Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. The Dolphins are currently projected to be $8.3 million over the cap next season. Salguero did note the team intends to release tight end Julius Thomas and linebacker Lawrence Simmons to save them $12 million against the cap, but that will only leave the Dolphins with $4 million available to upgrade their roster through free agency and the draft, with Landry's salary on the books. Drafted by Miami in the second round in 2014, Landry led the NFL with 112 receptions and set a career high with 9 touchdowns last season. The 25-year-old had over 1,000 receiving yards in 2015 and in 2016. Whew, this is a very stressful situation for a lot of Dolphins fans. For good reason. I mean, there's a lot of emotions attached to this. I think we all knew when I heard, okay, the Dolphins franchise tagged him, I was like, yes. Obviously, it's a non-exclusive franchise tag, meaning that obviously when he signs the tender, we could trade him anywhere we wanted to and get compensation for him. Or if anybody tries to sign him to anything and we don't match, then they have to give us 2 first-round picks. So obviously, that is not going to happen. That is the least likely situation that could possibly happen. And I think if we got 2 first-round picks for Juice, I think we could all kind of calm down a little bit. And I think that would probably be the best. Obviously, that's the best-case scenario. Obviously, that's not going to happen. I'm just saying, if there was a scenario where Jarvis leaves the Dolphins, I think that would be the smoothest thing to happen. But my thoughts on this, it is obviously when he got franchise tagged and the number was $16 million, and obviously Jarvis wants $14 million a year. We all can do math right there. We know that the Dolphins aren't gonna pay him $16 million. So either they're gonna trade him or try to get a long-term deal done. Those are the 2 things that happen. But we know one thing for sure is there's no way on God's green earth he is playing under that $16 million franchise tag. There's just no way. And that was the most depressing thing when I heard that. I was like, there's no way we're paying him $16 million. So we're obviously trying to get compensation for him so he just doesn't leave us without getting anything for him. Or we try to learn, and obviously as this article states, the Dolphins are still open to a long-term extension. But obviously nothing is getting done. So I wouldn't, obviously the Combine's coming around. That's something also that we're going to read about here in a second, which is when obviously all the teams can talk to each other. And it's, I'm sure that Jarvis Landry will be discussed ad nauseum at the Combine. But my personal feelings on this, I love Jarvis Landry to death. I think he's one of the best players we've drafted in the last 20 years. I think has Hall of Fame potential. I think he can be in Canton one day. I think he will go down, if he stays a Dolphin, I think he would go down as one of the greatest Dolphins in franchise history. I think he could literally crack the top 10. That's how good he is. So it's very hard to see a player like that leave this franchise because he is such a good player. He's such a good player. And you know what, to be frank with everybody, we haven't had a lot of great players like that, especially on the offensive side of the football since Marino retired. I mean, the best player we probably had on the offensive side of the football the last how many ever years since Marino retired, Ricky Williams gave us some of the best years an offensive player has given us, and that's not even somebody we drafted, obviously, somebody we traded for. The best guy we've drafted over the last how many ever years since Marino retired. I mean, that's a difficult. I mean, it's not a great list, and Jarvis Landry would beat them all because his career is just gonna go up from here. And a lot of people were like, I think he was the first receiver to have that many receptions and obviously not 1,000 yards in like a long time. That's because our quarterbacks were David Fales, Matt Moore, Jay Cutler. a revolving door, which is not a very good revolving door, to say the least. So you can imagine why his numbers would dip down, and they really didn't even dip. He set a career high in touchdowns with those guys. I mean, come on. So I love Jarvis Landry. If we get a third-round pick for him or something stupid like that, I'm done. I'm honestly going to probably mentally check out. You cannot justify getting rid of a player for a third-round pick. I understand you don't want to pay him $14 million a year. And I understand as a business and as a franchise, that might not be the smartest move in terms of future acquisitions to the franchise. But this is a player that you will not be able to find in the next 10 drafts, if you're lucky. Okay? This is a once-in-a-lifetime player. No player in NFL history has had 400 receptions. And everybody's like, oh, we play in these offensive-friendly rules. You know what? So did Marvin Harrison. So did Larry Fitzgerald. So does Anquan Bolden. Okay, so did Hines Ward at one point in his career. So does Doug Baldwin. He plays in the same era as Jarvis, and he can't even get close to those receptions. And he plays with Russell Wilson. Obviously, they run their offense differently. I get that. And Jarvis catches a lot of, obviously, intermediate routes. That's because he is so talented with the ball in his hands in open space. Doug Baldwin can't do that. That's why he doesn't have those plays drawn up for him, obviously. Jarvis Landry is more than a possession receiver. He is something that we've really never seen before. A lot of people compare him to Hines Ward. He has nothing. Hines Ward has nothing on Jarvis Landry when he catches the ball in open space. He's very similar in his tenacity and the way he plays the game and the way he run blocks for his team, but he has nothing on Jarvis Landry when it comes to I could take this. Like, there's been so many times in Jarvis's career where he's caught a 5-yard route and the first down is 10 yards. He's breaking a tackle and he's getting that first down, or he breaks one off for like a 70-yard run. My point is Jarvis Landry is a very unique talent that you will not find in the next 10 drafts. The Packers, who are probably the best team in the NFL at drafting talent for their scheme, wouldn't find a Jarvis Landry in the next 10 years. So the Dolphins' track record when it comes to drafting isn't even close to the Packers. So it would probably be 5 times longer for them to find a player of that caliber. Okay? So getting rid of a talent like this is just foolish in my opinion. I heard something. I was watching Bill Polian talk about this, who's obviously one of the greatest executives / GMs in NFL history. His track record is better than anybody's, obviously, probably other than Bill Walsh's track record as an executive, as a GM / head coach, who's probably, in my opinion, the best. Or you could talk about Bill Belichick, who obviously. Anyway, the point is Bill Polian's he's a great football mind, smarter than any of us. And most people, probably 99.9% of the people in the media. The man went to 4 Super Bowls, won one with Indianapolis. Great mind. And he was very critical of Jarvis Landry in the beginning. He said before, I think this was a year ago, like he wouldn't pay a slot receiver that much money, all this blah, blah, blah. He completely changed his mind, which I thought was interesting. He said, obviously, he said this very harsh words. The Dolphins don't have a lot of good football players, and Jarvis Landry is one of their good football players. He said he was a great player. He said that they should pay him, and he said that it was smart to put the tag on him, so if you do lose him, you're not losing him for nothing. But I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I do not know how you rationalize getting rid of him. I really don't know how. We can afford to keep him. It's not like we can't afford to keep him. Out of all the great players we've let walk over the last how many ever years, he would be the best player we let walk. He will go somewhere and help either a team win a Super Bowl, or he will go on to have a Hall of Fame career with somebody else. It's just depending on whether if Jarvis Landry is a Dolphin or not. So it's very unfortunate. He's one of the best players this franchise has drafted in the last 20 years. He's a great player. He is not a locker room issue, despite whatever you read in the media. Because if you read local beat writer stuff, either Omar Kelly, Adam Beasley, Barry Jackson, any of those guys, they will tell you. Like, you just read, and some of the glowing things that Jarvis Landry has done for the community, that Jarvis Landry has done for that locker room, how he's been one of the more consistent players in this franchise over the last how many years, how hard of a worker he is compared to everybody else in that locker room. He's a great player. I wish to God he stays on this team, but it's very unlikely. Because like I said, we know that he's not going to play on that $16 million franchise tag. There's no way that's happening. He hasn't even signed it yet, obviously. And we also know that that also means that he's likely to be traded. And obviously trade rumors have been surrounding Juice for the last 2 years now. So I don't think this surprises anybody. But again, it's a sucky situation to be in as a fan, because if we do lose him, we're not going to be able to replace him, and we're going to have to sit here and watch and like, oh, there goes another Dolphin that should have been a Dolphin for the rest of his life. And you know what? It really ticks me off because, you know, we gave Kiko this, and I remember I was upset when this stuff was happening. We gave Kiko this long-term deal. Kiko is terrible. Okay, and this is on our front office. This isn't on Jarvis Landry. This isn't everybody should be mad at Mike Tannenbaum and Chris Greer. Nobody should be mad at anybody. No fan should be mad at another fan for wanting to keep Jarvis Landry. That is insane to me. That is insanity. Why would you be mad at somebody who wants to keep a Hall of Fame caliber player? Or a franchise, you know, Ring of Honor type of a player? Why would you be mad at somebody who wants that? You should be mad at Mike Tannenbaum and Chris Greer for signing Kiko Alonso to a long-term deal, Andre Branch to a long-term deal, okay, Kenny Stills to a long-term deal. All three of those players are nowhere near the talent that Jarvis Landry is. It's not even close. It's not even close. You can blame them for this. You should be mad at them, because if it wasn't for those stupid deals, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Not to mention TJ McDonald, who didn't even play a down as a Dolphin, by the way, who didn't even play a down, and got a long-term extension, who was coming off an 8-game suspension. Are you kidding me? But we'll give those guys long-term deals, but not one of the greatest players we've drafted over the last 20 years. Why we won't give him all the money he wants and all the money he deserves, I don't know. But we'll give long-term deals to these idiots. Okay. You see, you know, you see all these players like Devontae Adams. You know what? I'm going to stop ranting because I think I've made my point. Okay. I just don't understand it. And I won't understand. It's just stupid football. It's just stupid football. That's all I have to say. This is one of the dumbest things that our front office could possibly do. And it hurts to even think about it. Because, you know, like, oh, we needed a safety at TJ McDonald, right? We could have drafted Josh Jackson, who had one heck of a rookie season. We could have got Malik Hooker easily. We could have moved up in the draft and got him. Given up like a third-round pick to get him, if we really wanted to. We could have fixed that safety position easy. Easy. We can't find another Jarvis Landry. Okay? We don't even need a great safety to play beside Rashad. We just need a good role player. So it ticks me off, and it's just why our franchise continues to do stupid stuff that makes no sense. It makes no sense, man. We get rid of Jay Ajayi, okay? Okay, fine. We get rid of Jay, fine. We got Kenyon, who I think is going to be a really good player, right? I can deal with that. Now we're going to get rid of Jarvis Landry? We had one of the best young offensive nucleuses in the NFL before we made all these stupid moves. We had Juice, we had DP, we had Jay, we had Kenyon, we have Jakeem, we had Kenny, all under the age of 25 at the time. Tannehill obviously a little older than that, but he's a young quarterback. All of that is gone when Jarvis Landry leaves Miami. We drafted so well, and we accumulated young talent, and it's just gone. And it's frustrating. And everybody's like, one thing I will say, and then we'll move on, because I'm rambling too long. But everybody's like, that 2016 team, obviously, terrible start to the season. Jay Ajayi was still held. Tannehill wasn't here at the beginning of the 2017 season. So all of that is invalid. But everything that happened in 2016, how the offense started off pretty bad. During the six-game winning streak, we were amazing. Even when Tannehill got hurt against the Jets, we passed for 4 touchdowns. Our offense is rolling. Not to mention, before Tannehill got hurt, at the time, the second-best defense, statistically, in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals, which is Blitz City up there, for God's sakes, the way they run their defense. They are sending heat all day, every day. We put 3 touchdowns on them before half. Before Tannehill got his knee decapitated by Calais Campbell. So our offense was rolling. rolling. And you know who helped put all those points up? J.J. Or not J.J., excuse me. Jarvis, Kenny, all of those guys. They were just they were helping us put up points. Obviously, Kenny against the Jets. So we had one of the best offensive nucleuses when they were together at the time. Even our offensive line, Laramie Tunsil, who's coming along. We have a lot of good offensive talent there. I don't know how many Pro Bowlers we had at the time on that team, but it was a significant amount. So I can't even remember the last time we literally had the potential. Think about this. I'm not even joking around. J.J., who's already a Pro Bowler. Jarvis Landry, Pro Bowler. Tannehill, who I think is eventually going to be a Pro Bowler. That's a Pro Bowler at the quarterback position. That's a Pro Bowler at the running back position. That's a Pro Bowler at the receiver position. Not to mention, you throw Mike Pouncey in there, Pro Bowler. Laramie Tunsil, I guarantee you will be a Pro Bowler at one point in his career. That's another Pro Bowler. This offense was so good and talented. Okay? And at this point, we're losing its best piece. We're losing the glue. We're losing the most consistent player of them all. And again, my second point to that is these are super young, talented players. First year in an Adam Gase offense that were figuring it out, developing, figuring out how to play with each other, chemistry-wise, figuring out how to win in the NFL, which they did in 2016. They went on to make the playoffs. That team had such a bright future, and it's just getting ripped apart. So that is another reason I am very upset about the moves that our franchise is taking. It's almost like we're in rebuilding mode for no reason. It's like we just lost faith in young talent that quick. Like, these aren't veterans we traded away. These aren't veterans we're getting rid of. These are guys that are under 25 years old putting up historical numbers. So think about that for a second. I don't care what position he plays. I'm paying him before I pay TJ, before I pay Andre, before I pay Kiko. Before I even pay Wake, for God's sakes. I'd cut Wake right now if it meant keeping Jarvis Landry. Because that actually can be justified because the man's 35 years old. Alright, next news story. Will Jarvis Landry trade talk heat up at upcoming scouting combine? If Jarvis Landry is actually going to be traded, it makes sense for this to happen as quickly as possible. We're not sure exactly why he just can't get done with the Dolphins, because the two sides deserve each other and could really use each other. God bless the crap in Palm Beach Post for saying it. But if some reason it really is an unattainable situation, there's no reason to wait. There are a lot of moving parts to a sign and trade, which is why they happen so infrequently. The Dolphins would need to find a team that Jarvis Landry would be enthusiastic about playing for. Perhaps a team like Tennessee, Baltimore, Dallas, New Orleans, Carolina, Oakland, or Arizona. To be honest with you, I'm pausing it right there. I'm stopping the bus. I could care less where Jarvis Landry wants to play. This isn't a lovey-dovey situation. I'm trying to trade you to get equal compensation for you because you and your agent can't agree to a crap and long-term deal. I don't know whose fault that is in the war room or whatever you want to call it, but I'm upset. Okay, so this isn't about where Jarvis Landry wants to play. I just want to. I hope that is not even taken into consideration. This is a business. Whoever wants to pay the highest ransom for him, I don't care if it's Cleveland, for God's sakes, then we're taking it. There are deadline. Okay, let's see here. Where did I? Then Landry and his agent, Demarius Bilbo, what a terrible name, would need to work out a potential contract out with that particular club, wherever we trade him. Then the Dolphins and that club would need to work out reasonable compensation. I love how there are steps before that step. Like, okay, Jarvis, pick where you want to play. Okay, is this okay with your agent? Oh, okay, so now we figure out if it's equal compensation. No, that should come first, in my opinion. There are deadlines, and this is a deadline league. Technically, Bilbo can engage with clubs with clubs in conversation about what they might be willing to pay for Landry as early as March 12th. Of course, agents and clubs routinely, casually, and informally discuss, quote, ideas at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, which begins on Tuesday in Indianapolis. No team is going to give up the 2 first-round picks that would be required in a straight Landry signing, but there is every reason to discuss what a deal would pay after a successful trade. The Dolphins and Landry's camp will obviously engage in Indy next week. It makes sense for them to really drill down on if a 4 or 5 year deal worth say 14 million a year with 40 or 45% of that guaranteed can be accomplished. If it's decided, it's just going to happen. They might as well discuss the list of teams Landry would be willing to play for. There is no point in the Dolphins, for example, discussing potential trade terms with a team he'd never play for. Alright, before we move on in this article, I want to say this really quick. I hope this isn't like a Shaquille O'Neal situation where he's literally leaving Orlando for the same amount of money, even though he thinks he's getting more money in LA. Okay, even if the difference is $1 million, I hope to God that is not what is happening right now. Because at that point, it's like arguing with preschool children over glue. But if that would meant Landry would go there for to I think. Hang on a second. All right, here we go. I lost my spot. For example, discussing potential trade terms with a team he never played for. Cleveland, you say? Well, yeah, maybe. But if that maybe meant Landry would go there for a 4 to 5 year deal that exceeded the projected $16 million franchise tag. That same could be said of the 49ers Jets. We would never, if we trade him in the division, oh my God. Good God. I don't even know what I would do. With lots of salary cap space. Would Landry be fine playing there if the money was oh so right? We think so. But again, we see why this isn't so simple. Who knows, perhaps the Browns would be all in on Landry, and he'd feel so very loved he'd make the Midwest move. Okay, if you're so very loved that you want to go 0 and whatever they've been, or 1 and whatever they've been over the last 2 years, you go over there and feel loved. Why? Well, the upcoming free agency and NFL draft. Teams in need of receivers may, of course, pursue other free agents and have less of a need for Landry. Teams in need of receivers, of course, draft a player at that position, lessening their need for Landry. Why would a team give up anything, even a low second or high third rounder, for a player that could be a free agent this year? If Miami removes the franchise tag, or after next season, if he plays for 1 season on the franchise tag, well, it's a good question. It will depend on the team and the situation, of course. How does the cap space? How much cap space do they have? How badly do they need a receiver? How do they perceive Landry's value? How much would they like to make a splash move? Any splash move seems more likely to happen sooner than later. There are people who know Landry who believe it's more likely that he's not traded. I hope that's true. But all involved also realize the complexity of the situation. Landry is said to be in a good place, and really, he is in a good position. He'll either 1, make $16 million this season, which puts him among the NFL's highest paid receivers. There's no way on God's green earth that's happening, even though I would love for it to happen. 2, get traded to a team that will give him a long-term deal that he wants. Or 3, be awarded the long-term deal in Miami deal that he really wants. It would behoove Miami and Landry to come together on a reasonable, fair deal that seems to be there for the taking. But if Miami has concluded a trade, if Miami has found a desirable trade, there is every reason to believe all involved will learn more at the combine in Indy about how they can proceed to the finish line. All right. Well, I think the key thing in this, which I can't believe was even said, is those close to Landry still think he will end up in Miami, which I think is interesting. I don't know. Hopefully that's true. I don't know what that means. I like in terms of like if those are his buddies or whatever. I don't know. But again, keep your fingers crossed. Everybody is the best thing I could say to you guys. Like I just really hope it doesn't happen. I honestly do. I cannot stand losing a player that good. Okay, I just can't, and I cannot watch him play for another team. All right, JJ, it hurt a little bit. It's not going to hurt nearly as bad as Jarvis Landry. All right, so if Jarvis Landry were to leave, I have listed for you guys the top wide receiver prospects in this draft and in free agency. So we're going to do the draft first, and then we'll go to free agency. So some of these players in the draft we're not going to draft, obviously, because they're going to be high-value guys. And even if Jarvis left, I don't think we're going to value a receiver at the 11th overall pick. So number 1 is Calvin Ridley. But by the way, before we continue, I do think if we lost Jarvis Landry, we're gonna have to draft one or sign something, because he's our most consistent, productive player on the in the receiver room. So not having him and counting on DP and Kenny Stills to consistently move the chains, I think is going to be a nightmare. You think third down conversions are bad with Jarvis Landry? He was our only shining. He was our only hope. Okay. So without them, we're definitely going to have to find, maybe Martavis Bryant would be an option for us, going out and try to trade for him, maybe giving up like a 4th or 5th round pick for him. They just want him out of Pittsburgh, is the rumors, because of his want to go be a dominant player and be the number one receiver on a different team. So if that is the case, I think that would be the best thing we could do, is replacing Juice with Martavis. I think would be the best move, but that's no way. If we get rid of Jarvis, you think our front office is smart enough to do something like that, then you're just wrong. So number 1, Calvin Ridley. Obviously, we know Calvin. In 2016, Ridley made 72 catches for 769 yards with 7 touchdowns. Obviously, that's in an offense. That's in a Nick Saban-ran team that just loves, smash mouth football. So he would definitely be somebody that I would love to have. But obviously, he's an unrealistic prospect for us to get, because he's going to be valued so high. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver, SMU, 6'4", 216. He had 862 yards, a 17.6 yard average per catch, and he had 9 touchdowns on 49 receptions. In I think it was not last season. In 2016, he had 76 receptions for 1,246 yards, 16.5 yard per catch average with 10 touchdowns, and that is somebody with a 6'4" frame and 218 pounds. His 40 time is 4.51. That is a very fast 40 time for somebody that big. The next wide receiver prospect, I can never pronounce his name. Kid from Notre Dame, St. Brown, wide receiver out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 205, runs a 4.50. He had 515 yards, 4 touchdowns in 2017. A lot of people blame the reason for his low production is because of the quarterback situation. The fourth rated prospect in this upcoming draft, Alden Tate, wide receiver, Florida State, 6'5", 255 pounds, projected 40 time, 4.56, which is pretty fast if that is what he reaches. 6'5", too. There's a lot of really big receivers in this upcoming draft that are pretty quick. Number 5, Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Texas A&M, height 5'11", weight 200 pounds, projected 40 time, 4.43. Projected rounds to be picked in 1 through 3. I like him. I think he would literally be a Jarvis Landry clone if we get him in like round 2 or 3. I think he'll go somewhere in the 2nd to 3rd round. Very talented guy. Reminds me a lot of Cooper Kupp. Probably a little bit more talented, a little bit higher ceiling than Cooper had. So he would be the perfect replacement in my opinion. So those are the top 5 prospects. In terms of we'll do 6 through 8. Simi Cobbs Jr., wide receiver, Indiana, 6'4", weight 220, projected 40 time 4.55, projected rounds 1 through 3. He had 72 receptions for 841 yards and 8 touchdowns. The number 7 prospect, Anthony Miller, wide receiver, Memphis, 5'11", 190 pounds, projected 40 time 4.52, projected rounds to be drafted in 2 through 3. He had over 1,000 yards, almost 2,000 yards. He had 1,462, 18 touchdowns in 2017, which is pretty dang good. Kiki Kuti, or however the heck you say this kid's name, wide receiver, Texas Tech, 5'11", weight 180, projected 40 time 4.53, projected rounds to be drafted in 3 through 4. So yeah, he had a very productive. This is obviously same school that Cheem got drafted out of. He caught 93 passes for almost 1,500 yards with 10 touchdowns. So that's a very interesting. A lot of people compare him to Steve Smith, which is a very interesting pro comparison. Obviously, I don't think he's a Steve Smith. I mean, that's a Hall of Famer, but still very talented. So these are the top wide receiver free agent wide receivers this upcoming draft or upcoming free agency. So if Jarvis were to be traded, these would be some of the guys that possibly could be signed. Most of these guys won't be signed because they're going to be asking for a lot of cash, or they're going to be franchise tagged. All right, number 1. Oh, and by the way, both of these lists come from WalterFootball.com. So you guys can go check out the rest of the list if you want to at walterfootball.com. Just in case you guys think these are my lists, these are not my lists. Jarvis Landry is the #1 rated receiver in free agency. Obviously, he was franchise tagged. Josh Gordon is #2. There is no way he is not going to be a Cleveland Brown. Allen Robinson, who I think is the best free agent wide receiver in this class, without all the injuries, excluding his injury-prone history, which is a big deal. Obviously, if he's looking for a lot of money, that's a big deal. And if I was the GM, I probably wouldn't pull the trigger on that one. But he is such a good receiver. I think he's better than Josh Gordon, in my opinion. His ceiling is not higher than him, but I think he can be more consistent. When you talk about he's a touchdown machine, he's very Des Bryant-ish. He had 14 touchdowns, almost 1,500 yards. He caught 80 passes in 2015. Very Des Bryant-esque numbers for Allen Robinson. So if somehow the Dolphins got Allen Robinson, I think we would all be ecstatic, but that's like super unlikely. Sammy Watkins is #4. He's going to be franchise tagged. Cameron Meredith, he's a restricted free agent. Very interesting player. Obviously, Adam Gase very familiar with him. So he caught 66 passes for 888 yards in 2016. Very interesting prospect if you were to become a Dolphin. Terrell Pryor, he could definitely be a super cheap acquisition. And in Adam Gase offense, Adam's very creative. He understands players' talents. Very disappointing season he had with the Redskins. He's 29 years old. I don't know. I don't know if he'd be the best acquisition. Marquise Lee, absolutely not. He gets injured way too much. Dante Moncrief, another guy who's injury prone. Paul Richardson, if he somehow left Seattle, I would love me some Paul Richardson. I love Paul Richardson. You talk about a great 50-50 ball guy, a great slot, really good deep threat, very great hands, great red zone target. Even though he's a very small guy, he's a great route runner. Very Doug Baldwin-esque, but he's such a good downfield threat. He got 44 passes for 703 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2017. So I love Paul Richardson. The 10th best free agent receiver, Mike Wallace. 11, Eric Decker. Both guys I would rule out. 13 through 15, Bruce Ellington for the Texans. Tyrell Williams. I love Tyrell Williams, so he could be a guy that we could go after. John Brown. I forgot that he was a free agent. I love John Brown. He was compared to Marvin Harrison early on in his career. He's a very good player. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard barrier in 2015. Unfortunately, his previous 2 years have been devastated by injury. So that's something that we would definitely have to take into consideration. But I do love John Brown. Jordan Matthews, who's a great player in my opinion when he was with the Eagles. Very good slot guy, great route runner, great chain mover. You know, there's a lot of really good undervalued, like Cameron Meredith. He's like a really good role player to pick up for really cheap. Tyrell Williams, former CFL star, great player, great down the field threat. Obviously 1,000-yard potential. Paul Richardson, who I love to death. I would love to have Paul Richardson on the Dolphins. John Brown, obviously, I love him if he could stay healthy. Allen Robinson would be a little bit more of a big name, but there are a couple players that could fly under the radar that could be Dolphins. Even if we kept Juice, I would love if we could get Cameron Meredith on like a cheap deal, or John Brown on a very cheap deal, or Paul Richardson, who I think would probably account for more money. But those guys, I would say, are going to be way like probably. I would say especially Cameron Meredith and like John Brown, are maybe the 3 to 4 million range, somewhere in there, which would still be a lot of money for us because our cap space is so low. But I would love to get one of those guys, even if we kept Juice. Somehow, bring some of those guys in and add a little bit more pop to the offense and a little bit more consistency, because Paul, Cameron, very consistent players. Obviously, Cameron has dealt with injuries as well. Paul has as well, so has John, and so has Allen. So there's a lot of bad injury history there. But maybe we pick them up, they can stay healthy for a season and give us some good minutes. And I love those guys, man. I love Paul Richardson, and I love John Brown too. Really good route runner, really knows how to use his speed. He's not just a downfield threat. He knows how to play the game. So I like that. I like that a lot. Next news story. This comes from the Miami Herald. He was the Dolphins' 2009 first-round pick. Is he considering coming back to Miami? This comes from Adam Beasley. Vontae Davis might be coming back to Miami. 6 years after he was traded to the Colts, Vontae Davis, Miami's first-round pick in 2009, is at least considering a return to the Dolphins. He was in town for a visit Friday, the Miami Herald has confirmed, as a part of a multi-city free agent tour. ESPN reported the meeting happened. Davis, a 29-year-old cornerback, is available before the start of free agent because the Colts cut him last November. He has undergone season-ending groin injury surgery since then, but a falling out with the organization prompted by the Colts to cut him instead of putting him on injured reserve. He has since met with the 49ers, Browns, Bills, and Raiders, and while health concerns could drive down his price, it is difficult to see how he fits financially with the Dolphins. They already have at least 3 boundary corners they see as potential starters: Xavier Howard, Cordrea Tankersley, and Tony Lippett, and their salary cap situation is among the league's worst. San Francisco, meanwhile, has more than $70 million in cap space. Still, a return to Miami would be remarkable, considering how his first stint with the team ended. New Dolphins coach Joe Philbin had problems with Davis's attitude, and so Miami traded him to Indianapolis in 2012. One of the worst decisions Joe could ever have done. The world got to see the team inform Davis the Dolphins were the subjects of HBO's Hard Knocks, and cameras were rolling as the general manager Jeff Island broke the news. So yeah, it would be cool to see Vontae back in a Dolphins uniform. I would rather spend as much as, all that money on Paul Richardson or John Brown, because I think they're younger. Obviously they would, I think, impact the team more. I love Tony, I love Xavier, I love Cordrea. I think they're better than Vontae is at this point in his career. If you guys watch that Colts defense, and I recommend not doing that because it will hurt your eyes, they're one of the worst in the league, if not probably, in my opinion, they're by far the worst defense in the NFL, especially talent-wise, and Vontae Davis definitely was not helping them. They've been the worst defense in my opinion, just talent-wise, and just straight up bad. I thought Chuck Pagano did a great job with them, and the fact that he got fired blows my mind because he worked wonders with that defense, and it's pretty bad. So, yeah, I'm not super excited about that at all. So hopefully he doesn't become a Dolphin. I would rather get a younger player in free agency that could be a role player for the Dolphins, whether that's on the offensive or defensive side of the football. Again, there were some really good role players in this free agency class that I think the Dolphins probably could take advantage of and get for super cheap. So we'll see, but I definitely don't like that move. Alright guys, we're kind of running out of time here, so we're going to have to hurry up here. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Offensive tackles the Dolphins could seek out in this upcoming free agency class. We got Nate Solder of the New England Patriots. His Pro Football ranking is number 32. He's obviously 29 years old. Justin Pugh, his ranking 52, age 27. Cameron Fleming, age 25, ranking 24. Henderson of the Buffalo Bills, age 25, wasn't even ranked. Ladrian Waddle, I think it's Waddle or Weddle, I can't remember. New England Patriots, his ranking was 64, age 26. Chris Hubbard, who actually I thought played very well. Pro Football rankings number 40, age 26, played really well in place of Marcus Gilbert. Greg Robinson, Pro Football Focus ranking 78, age 31, absolutely. I can't believe Greg Robinson he's 31 years old? Really? I can't believe that, man. Time flies. Anyway, no, I don't like I think Jesse Davis is a better player than probably everybody except Chris Hubbard. Maybe I think he's better than Chris Hubbard. He definitely has a higher ceiling. So no, I disagree with all of that. I don't think the Dolphins should seek out any of those players. If anything, you want to go get a guard, that'd be great. Let's see here. Dolphins not expected to cut Mike Pouncey or his salary. So there you go. That comes from Pro Football Talk. We're not going to get into the details of that. It's pretty self-explanatory there. All right. So let's get into the quarterback segment that we have done the last, I don't know how many podcasts, but we're going to continue this train. I know a lot of people like, please do Mason Rudolph. I can't remember some of the other guys that you guys wanted me to do. This week we're going to be doing Josh Rosen. Obviously Mel Kiper released his mock draft He had Josh Allen going number 1 overall to the Browns, then Sam Darnold number 5 overall to the Denver Broncos. Then he had Baker Mayfield going 6th overall to the New York Jets, and then he had Josh Rosen falling all the way down to 11 to the Miami Dolphins, our Miami Dolphins. So I thought that was interesting stuff. Before we get into Josh Rosen, I want to do my big draft board for the Dolphins. Right now, number 1 on my draft board, I have a tie between Josh Rosen. The only reason I'm putting him on here, because this is realistic picks for the Dolphins, because I don't think this is a realistic pick, but the only reason I'm putting on him on the draft board this week is because he was in a mock draft connected to the Dolphins. Okay. So I got Josh Rosen and Luke Falk tied for 1. 2, I have Mike White. 3, I have Lamar Jackson. So those are my top 3 so far. And I love Lamar Jackson, but I really like Mike White too. I think Mike White probably fits. Lamar Jackson has a way higher ceiling than Mike White. I might switch the two, but I think Mike White has some pretty decent potential. I think Lamar Jackson has more potential, but not to get on rambling. You know what? I take it back. We're gonna go Lamar Jackson 2 and Mike White 3 for sure. All right, this next news story comes from Pro Football Focus. Josh Rosen, the good, the bad, and the highly volatile. Let's see here. The good. Let's start at the intermediate 10 to 19 yard level, where Rosen posted the top grade in the draft class in 2017. It's an important place to have success, as most of the best NFL quarterbacks are excellent in this range, and Rosen has all of the tools to carry that forward to the next level. He can throw with anticipation over the middle of the field, zip to hit tight windows, touch to avoid linebackers, and has a good feel for working the back shoulder game on the outside. On intermediate throws last season, Rosen ranked 5th in the draft class in adjusted completion percentage at 70.1 and posted the second highest percentage of big-time throws. Watch Rosen as he squeezes the pass to a tight window, putting it right on his receiver. So you guys can't see that, but I can. It's a pretty nice throw. The bad. The same aggressiveness that leads Rosen to his big-time throws can also come back to bite him. Rosen has always ranked on the higher end in turnover-worthy throws. He ranked 24th in the draft class in 2017 at avoiding turnover-worthy plays due to a combination of his middle-of-the-field aggressiveness, a discard for linebackers and safeties, and a few issues with fumbles. Rosen's aggressiveness makes him a highly volatile thrower. He rarely sees a tight window he's not willing to hit, and leads to a combination of NFL-caliber throws, but also has head-scratching decisions. Those tight windows he is willing to hit will sometimes lead to ugly interception opportunities for the defense. His game against USC was one of the best we've seen in his 3 years, but its throws like this have kept Rosen from truly hitting his high ceiling. The bottom line. Understanding the good and the bad that Rosen brings to the table is crucial to his evaluation, from his ability to make plays at the intermediate level to his feel for all necessary NFL throws. Rosen has the skills and aggressiveness to create downfield opportunities at the next level. However, the same aggressiveness that leads to the special plays also leads to far too many turnover-worthy plays. We've seen other quarterbacks have success with this style, and there's certainly an argument to be made that a quarterback capable of adding value rather than just avoiding turnovers is preferable. It's important to understand that these strengths and weaknesses will work hand in hand, and the top end of Rosen's play will lead to special games, and perhaps even special seasons, much like Eli Manning has shown throughout his career. So, my opinion on Josh Rosen is very interesting, and I want to comment on something that they said in this article because I think it's very interesting. But I will start with this. I love Josh Rosen. I actually think he can be a very, very good NFL player. Depending on if he wants, obviously we'll get into that here in a second, but I think his talent level is great. I said Luke Falk is a better version of Josh Rosen. After extensively watching some of his tape, obviously the Texas A&M game stands out. The Stanford game, not a really good game. The USC game. The reason I bring up the Stanford game is he had 60 pass attempts in that game. So you guys kind of got to. He's in a pro style offense, by the way. A lot of under center stuff, a lot of pro style concepts, and they're passing for it 60 times a game because they were down. So he had no running game at all. He was very heavily relied on. Maybe that's why he's so aggressive. Or maybe he's just got a big ego and he thinks he can fit the ball into any window. That's very Jay Cutler-esque, obviously. That's just not how you play football. I don't care how talented you are. You still have to play the game the right way, and I think he does. Obviously, a lot of people are raving about how smart of a player he is. One of the good things that I hear about, that you hear around anytime you listen to anything about Josh Rosen, is he's very good at the line of scrimmage. He can read coverages very well. He sees the field very well. He's a really good field general, which is that's a huge compliment in my opinion. So all of those things I love about Josh Rosen. I think he throws a pretty football. I think his down the field accuracy is second to none in this draft class. He not only does he have a big arm, but he can fit in. I mean, my God, we're talking about 50 yards down the field. This man is just putting it on people in the breadbasket. I really like Josh Rosen. The thing I don't like about Josh, I would say a criticism of his game, his athleticism is it's not very good. He's not an athlete at all. He's not very good at throwing on the run, so when he gets pressure and when he gets linebackers in his face, it's pretty much a done deal every single time. So he's not going to create offense at all on the next level. He's going to be a Peyton Manning. He's going to be a statue. He's going to be a pocket passer. When he tries to throw on the run, he can't throw off platform like a Sam Darnold can, or even a Luke Falk for that matter, because he's so strong that it's very hard to bring him down. He's very Ben Roethlisberger-esque when it comes to his strength in the pocket. He can stay on his feet and make a throw downfield off platform without using any of his mechanics. It's just backyard football. Josh Rosen really struggles at that. When he's under pressure, and I've noticed when I've watched him, when he tries to break the pocket and he tries to set up and throw, he's literally setting up just like a normal, like he's in the pocket and then throw. He can't throw off platform. So that's a big area of concern for me. But that's okay, because to me, that's just not his game. You know what I'm saying? Just like Lamar Jackson's game is not to sit in the pocket and pass for it 50 times a game. His game is to run around and utilize his athleticism. Josh Rosen's game is to sit in the pocket and surgically pick you apart. So wherever he gets drafted, he's going to have a really good offensive line in front of him to have real success on the next level. So if he gets drafted to us or somewhere else, we got to make sure we protect him, because he cannot create offense. He sucks at throwing on the run. Like, he's one of the worst I've seen come out of the draft in a very long time. Like I said, he just cannot throw off platform at all. It's very bad. So that's one thing I would say about his game that I don't really like. But some other things that are speculation and personality, things that everybody's talking about, how he questions coaching, and it's very hard to coach him because he asks why. He just doesn't take the orders. He doesn't take the constructive criticism, I guess, how other people would like him to take it. And that's very Jay Cutler-esque. A lot of people compared that to. One of the other things that I think is Jay Cutler-esque, and I don't really necessarily agree with this. I think he does take care of the ball fairly well. I guess the game against Memphis, you really turn the ball over a lot. But I don't necessarily agree that he's like Brett Favre or something. Like, he's like trying to squeeze balls in there. I think Sam Darnold did the same thing. Luke Falk did the same thing because he's passing for it 60 times a game. It's going to happen. So I don't necessarily agree that he's like this gunslinging Brett Favre or anything, and he's gonna have turnover issues. But I don't think he will. But it's very Jay Cutler-esque. Like, the personality thing. Like, I have the ego that I could fit the ball into tight windows. That's very Jay Cutler-esque. I'm not gonna listen to coaching because I think my talent is greater than any coaching that you can give me. Like, I can make this throw into a cover 2 because my arm's strong enough. That's not how you play the game. I don't care how talented you are. You still have to fundamentally understand how to play the game, or you're not going to be good at it. Just look at Jay Cutler. He's supremely talented. He tried to have a career off just his talents alone, didn't accept coaching, and look where he is now. So that's a concern when I look at Josh Rosen. If he knows he's that talented, if he has that big of an ego, if he questions coaching, I think that could be a big issue for him on the next level. And he could become a Jay Cutler and become a turnover maniac. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I don't know Josh Rosen. I've never talked to him. I don't know. I've never been in a huddle with him. So me saying this is just pretty stupid. But that's just stuff you hear in the media and stuff. And I think those personality traits and some of those football traits are very similar to Jay Cutler in those ways, even though I don't think he's a gunslinger. I mean, he is nothing like Jay Cutler was in Vanderbilt. So I think he's a way smarter player than Jay Cutler ever hoped to be, for God's sakes, because he is a pocket passer, and he has to understand coverages. He has to anticipate throws. He has to become a cerebral player. So I think those are all ups for me with Josh Rosen. I really like him. I think he can be a very I think he could be a franchise quarterback for a very long time in this league. And I think Adam Gase would probably be a really good situation for him because Adam's he's a very flexible coach. It's not his way or the highway. I think he does a very good job of adjusting to whatever talent he is speaking to and understanding the kind of guy he's speaking to. He's not one of these old school coaches that, like, it's like if you don't act a certain way, then I hate you. I think Adam Gase understands personality, so I think they could get along for sure. If you get along with Jay Cutler, you can get along with Josh Rosen. So that is it, guys. I like Josh Rosen. I think he's one of the. I think if on the draft, excuse me, I don't know why I hit the mic. I think he would be one of the best prospects the Dolphins could take at quarterback for sure, if not the best, in my opinion. So I'm Skyx83. Let me know what you think about Josh Rosen, and I will see you guys and Jarvis Landry as well. And I will see you guys in the next.